Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to grab a snack or a glass of water, and we're delighted to have you back with us. We're going to jump right into our next session. As many of you know, there's been a lot written about Disney and the remarkable ways that they think about their guest-centric service. And we're thrilled to have Wayne Olson, JD, Gift Planning Officer at Intermountain Foundation, share his backstage look at some Disney secrets and how Disney's famous guest-centric focus can apply to your donor relations. So with that, Wayne, donor relations the Disney way.
Hi, this is Wayne Olson, and thanks for joining us today. I'm the Planned Giving Officer for Intermountain Foundation in Salt Lake City, and today we're going to talk about donor relations the Disney way, make the difference that matters, and how we can all apply what happens in the Disney organization to what we do for the organizations and the donors we serve. For our time together today, we've got three goals. The first goal is to blaze new trails, to show how Disney blazed new trails and how we can do the exact same thing. We'll also look at ways that Disney encourages its cast members to give their best and how we can do the same thing. And finally, how we can all connect well and connect better with our donors and even with our coworkers and supervisors. So let's begin with blazing new trails. One of the things that fascinates me, and I think you might find interesting, is why is Disney so popular? What is it about the enduring popularity of Disney that we can replicate in our offices? Is Disney popular because it has the tallest roller coaster in the world? Well, no, actually it doesn't. That's the tallest roller coaster in the world. It's in New Jersey. It is the King de Ka, and it's 456 feet high. So Disney does not have the tallest roller coaster in the world. If it didn't have the tallest roller coaster in the world, maybe it has, oh, by the way, that's the front seat view from the King de Ka. Maybe Disney has the fastest roller coaster in the world. Well, it doesn't have the fastest roller coaster either. This is the fastest roller coaster in the world. And it's across the Atlantic Ocean in Abu Dhabi. And it goes 149 miles per hour. Well, Disney doesn't have the tallest or the fastest roller coaster in the world. Maybe it has the longest roller coaster in the world. Nope, it does make the top 10. The Incredicoaster in California is the 9th longest roller coaster in the world, but it's not the longest. You see, Disney doesn't have the tallest, the fastest, or the longest of anything. By the way, that's the longest roller coaster in the world, the Steel Dragon in Japan at 8,133 feet. Disney doesn't have the tallest, the fastest, or the longest of anything. And when I work with other charities and with other peers who talk about what resources they have, the thing to remember about Disney is they don't do anything the best other than have the most people pay to get into their parks and movies. It's all about how they treat the people they serve. And the good news is, for us, it's all about how we treat the people we serve. Because of the way Disney approaches its customers or its guests, they have the top 10 attended theme parks in the world, with the exception of one, and that's Universal Studios Japan. They do what they do so well that they dominate and actually define their industry. Now, things are a little bit different this year because all of the Disney parks are closed except for Shanghai. And I've updated the top theme parks just this year because of the coronavirus. Here's how they look this year so far. The rankings seem to change day to day, but as of today, these are the top ranked theme parks in the world because of the coronavirus. But let's move back to Disney. Harry Beckwith, in his book, Selling the Invisible, said, service in this country is so bad, you can offer above average service and still stink. The resolution, he says, is to ignore your industry's benchmarks, whatever they are, and copy Disney's. So that's why we're going to talk about Disney. Walt Disney himself said, you can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes what to make the dream a reality? You might think it takes money. Some people say magic. Some people take creativity. It takes you. It takes people to make the dream a reality. Walt Disney knew very early on for him to have a successful theme park, its success would depend upon the people who worked for the company. It's all about you because you matter. We are very fortunate to work in the nonprofit industry, and it's one of the very few industries, fundraising in particular, where who you are matters as much or more than what you know. Who you are matters, and it's all about you. Your success as a fundraiser depends upon you and your personality and what we do. We need to set each other up for success. And at Disney, they set their guests up for success before they even get into the park. The whole concept of Disneyland was that you were about to walk onto a movie set where you were the star of the show. And at Disney, before you even get in the park, if you look down at your feet, you'll notice that the ground is painted red. The reason why it's red is because you're the star of this movie that you're going to be in today, and you deserve a red carpet. Universal Studios also has a red carpet, also indicating who the star of the show is when you visit the park. The theme continues, since you're going to be the star of a movie, whenever you go to see a movie, the first thing that happens is the theater gets dark. And to enter Disneyland or the Magic Kingdom, you have to go through one of two tunnels where everything gets dark. And just like in a movie, when you're in the tunnel, you see previews of coming attractions. There are posters on the wall that literally show you what you're going to experience that day. The theme of you being the star of the movie continues, and everything is setting you up for your very own movie. And of course, if you're going to be in a movie, there's always going to be hot popcorn. So whenever you enter or leave a Disney park, you will always see, smell, and maybe taste popcorn, because if you're in a movie, it has to be there. The thing about Disney is he trusted the people that worked for him. He had thought about his Mickey Mouse Land or Disneyland since the 1920s, and it was the most important thing that he ever wanted to do. In 1953, he was well on his way to planning Disneyland, which would open 2 years later, and he heard about a meeting in Chicago at the Sherman Hotel of amusement park owners. Now, these are the traditional amusement park owners with the carny rides and the games, things like that. And he sent 4 people to Chicago to talk to these other amusement park owners to see what they would say about his plans for Disneyland. And he gave them every detail of his plans for Disneyland. He sent Dick Irvine, Buzz Price, Bill Cottrell, and Nat Weinkauf to this party or to this convention and held a party for the other amusement park owners and said, here's our plans for Disneyland. What do you think? Well, one of the people, Bill Schmidt of Chicago's Riverview Park, looked at the plans, and George Whitney of San Francisco Playland, and Harry Batt of Pontchartrain Park, and Ed Schott of Coney Island all looked at it, and they all said the same thing to Disney's top people at the same time. They said, Disneyland won't work. They said, tell your boss to go home and stick to the movie business and leave the amusement business to people who know what they're doing. They said that custom rides would never work. You need to buy your rides off a shelf like we do. The parts are easy to get, they're cheaper to replace, and you can change them out easier. Every square inch of your park should produce money, and you've got a lot of grass and green space. Why would you do that? You're gonna fail immediately. Oh, why landscaping? People walk over the plants and no one will ever see a flower because they'll be uprooted almost immediately. So don't bother landscaping your parks. And by the way, you can only operate in the summer. You can't operate year round. And you should have 4 entrances, 1 on each side. And you've only got 1. Why? Oh, you keep talking about this Jungle Cruise ride. And why? It's stupid. The animals will be asleep during the day and no one will ever see them. So why are you bothering? And your boss talks about cleanliness and he wants it to be a clean, comfortable place. Your ideas about cleanliness, and this is a direct quote, are economic suicide. Your boss will lose his shirt by caring about things that no one will ever notice. So tell him to go home and leave it to us. Well, how often are we told that we shouldn't do something because somebody else knows better? Now, sometimes they do, and it's always important to listen to wise counsel, but there's also a time for innovating and doing new things. And Walt Disney did that, and he opened Disneyland, and later he opened Epcot and the Magic Kingdom in Orlando. Of course, he didn't live to see those. But what happened to the 4 people who gave him the advice? Chicago went out of business in 1967, San Francisco in 1972, Pontchartrain Park in 1983, and only Coney Island in Cincinnati is still open today. And in 1953, Walt Disney hired Ed Schott of Coney Island to be a consultant on the construction of Disneyland. Sometimes trying new things is worth it, especially when you give it your best. And Disney always encouraged his cast members to give their best. When you give your best, you do things better than you possibly think you could. Harry Beckwith, in the same book, Selling the Invisible, said that marginal tactics executed passionately almost always outperform brilliant tactics executed marginally. When we apply passion to what we're doing for a living, we can accomplish great things. And in the profession we work in and for the causes we serve, we have great reason to be passionate for what we do. The most dangerous words in the Disney organization or in any organization, including ours, is "that's the way we've always done it." A close second, the second most dangerous words in any organization, "that's the way they do it across the street." Whenever we answer a question with "that's the way we've always done it" or "that's the way they do it at the hospital down the street," we're probably in trouble. If we can't come up with a better reason than either one of those two, we're probably in trouble. So if you catch yourself answering the question that way, be sure to have a good explanation of why it's okay to keep doing it the way we've always done it. And sometimes doing it the way you've always done it gets you in trouble. You're looking at some windows on Main Street, USA, and Walt Disney insisted that the windows be built lower to the ground than the code required. The reason why is so that children could look in windows with the same ease as their parents. He said parents, their backs will hurt a little bit less at the end of the day, and they probably won't even realize why. But it's because they didn't have to lift their children up to have the same point of view as them. If we think about our donors and our guests from the very beginning, we always get feedback that what we've done helped them, but somehow they'll know that we have. And by the way, that's not all altruistic. When the kids can look in the window with the adults, they can point to the things that they want mom and dad to buy for them. So my question for myself when I approach my job every day, and my question for you, is are there any windows, literal or figurative, in your shop that need to be lowered for your donors? The technology in the Haunted Mansion is 150 years old. It was invented by a chemist named John Pepper in London before the American Civil War. You use old technology in new ways, you can do amazing things. And again, a lot of people tell me, well, we don't have the budget to do this or the money to do that. So how can we ever do something as spectacular as what Walt Disney did with Disneyland? Well, the Pepper's Ghost example is one that he used that John Pepper's illusion of the transparent figures. But also the organ in the Haunted Mansion is the same one that was sitting in a warehouse after the conclusion of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The organ in the Haunted Mansion ballroom scene is actually the one that James Mason played in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They needed an organ. They didn't want to buy one, so they just looked for one and said, hey, we've got one in the warehouse, let's use it. If you look closely at some of the ghosts in the Haunted Mansion, or in the Pirates of the Caribbean, or in the Hall of Presidents, you'll see some familiar faces. If you're making an audio animatronic of a president, why not make 3 or 4? Just put different costumes and facial hair, and you can use them in all kinds of places throughout the park. Look for ways to make the work you do last and stretch further and longer. Rolly Crump, who helped design a lot of Disneyland and Disney World, said, you may think that people sculpting for Disney had these gorgeous temperature-controlled rooms filled with north light. No, when he worked for Disney, he did all of his best work on a chair with a card table in the parking lot at the park. That's where he worked, and that's where he accomplished. And the tools he used, you'd think that Disney would give him the best tools available to accomplish his work. Well, they may have, but the thing he used the most was a plastic fork that he got from the commissary. Again, it's not the tools or the money that hold us back. It's our imagination and our desire to do something with passion for our cause. I remember when we opened Disneyland, Walt Disney said, we didn't have enough money to finish the landscaping, so I had Chief Landscape Architect Bill Evans go out and put Latin name tags on all the weeds. You can do a lot with imagination. The street lights on Main Street USA were purchased as surplus stock from the city of Baltimore for 3 cents a pound. The flagpole at the center of Town Square in Disneyland is an old street light from Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. An Imagineer saw it hit by a car on a Sunday afternoon and asked the city of Los Angeles if he could buy it. They said, sure, for 28 cents a pound. He did, and they sold it to him, and now it's at Disneyland forever. And it's still there today, and you can go look at it if you want. And that flagpole plays a prominent part in both the morning and afternoon at Disneyland, in addition to the flag flying high all day. When they lowered the flag at Disneyland, they noticed that people would stop and reverently watch as the flag was being lowered. And in particular, they noticed that veterans were watching with a certain heightened level of respect. So early in the morning now, a Disney cast member will find a veteran somewhere in the park and ask him or her to help lower the flag at the end of the day. The veteran leads the cast members off stage holding the flag, and then backstage, the cast members present the veteran with a lapel pin and a certificate commemorating his or her helping of lowering the flag. If that veteran spent $10,000 in 5 days in a vacation there, when he gets home to Iowa to talk to his friends and relatives about what happened at the Magic Kingdom, are they going to talk about the roller coasters or the hotel? No, they're going to talk about the time Grandpa helped lower the flag on Main Street, USA. We can do spectacular things that don't cost us a penny, that are more memorable than the things that we spend millions of dollars on. I copied the idea, and I encourage you to as well. It may not be the American flag. It could be something else in your organization. But when I was with the University of the South, I had print services make a certificate. I would go to Walmart and buy a flag and run it up the school's flagpole, take it down, and then have the president and provost sign it, and we'd deliver it to a donor who deserved or was worthy of some recognition. It was very popular, more popular than I thought it would be. Look for opportunities to do things your donors don't expect when you honor them, because it is all about them and it's all about you and you doing things in a better way. I stayed at a Hilton that had spent millions of dollars renovating their lobby, and they asked the guests, including me, what'd you think? Of course, the interesting thing is they didn't ask about the renovations to the lobby. They asked who made our day special. It was the people that made the difference, not what made the difference. What business are you in? What business are you in? In the 1930s and 40s, the only way you could really get around this country was by train, like Santa Fe Railroad. About that time, people would start asking the owners of the railroad that these things called airplanes might cut into our business. And the captains of industry said, no, our trains are the best, and we do trains better than anybody else. Today, however, we don't fly on Burlington Airlines or Santa Fe Airlines. We fly on Delta, United, Southwest. The train people thought they were in the train business, but they were really in the transportation business. What business are you in? It may not be fundraising, and it may not be healthcare. It may be something else, and those are just the things that get us to what we really do. Are we in the train business or the transportation business? This is the Flying Squirrels' minor league baseball team in Richmond, Virginia. The owner of the team knows what business he's in. He's in the memory business. It's not about baseball, it's about memories. Another executive for another team says that, and by the way, the fans go nuts for the home team when you know what your priorities are. Another executive says most of the crowd will not even know what the score is when they leave the game. Don't make it about the game. If you lose, you still want them to leave with a smile. It's all about something else. So what business are you in? You see, theaters show movies, but they don't make money on movies. They make money on food. If you talk to a movie house owner, they'll tell you they're not in the movie business, they're in the concession business. The reason why is because the movies are just an excuse for people to come in and buy popcorn. By the way, the markup on popcorn is 1,275%. Once a Disneyland gardener went up to Walt and said, Walt, the guests keep walking through the flower bed. You've paid a lot of money for these flowers, and those pesky people keep walking on them. And I think what we need to do is put up a fence to keep them out of those flowers. Walt said, we're not going to put up a fence, we're going to pave the pathway. If we have donors that are telling us over and over again something that's different than what we're expecting, maybe it's time to pave the pathway rather than making sure that we keep them where we want them to be. Well, don't build it for yourself. You know what people want, you build it for them. And that's what we do too. Jeff Gittmer, in his book, the very little but very powerful book on closing, says that we should present a compelling message that is value driven, not product driven. No one has ever said to me, hey, Wayne, I couldn't help but make a gift to you because your brochure was so slick, or your handout was so well done, or your PowerPoint presentation was so perfectly executed. It's not about the things that we have. It's about the values that we deliver. And it's always about them, not about us. Walt Disney said, we don't entertain 100,000 people a day. We entertain 100,000 people one at a time. When we do deliver that value, when we do reach out to donors, we have to remember that every donor is unique, even if the donor we're talking to seems to be exactly like the one we talked to 10 minutes ago. They're all unique, and we have to approach them one at a time. Lee Cockrell, a retired Disney executive, said, you win customers, you win donors one at a time, and lose them 1,000 at a time. And a priority for us, something we think is important, may only be a passing thing to our donors. A priority for us may be known to our donors just as a passing comment. See, the donors only pay attention to what they want, not what we ask them to. So it's important to remember that donors are always going to seek what they want, not necessarily what we point them to. We can make huge mistakes by trying to think that donors are interested in what we want them to believe in. Here's an example. When I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, this real estate agent, Matt Curtis, had dozens, perhaps hundreds of these billboards all over Alabama that let us know that he has the top nationally ranked website. You know, if I'm Matt Curtis or I'm his webmaster, that's pretty cool. It's pretty great to have the best website in the country. But what does that do for the donor or the customer? Are people going to come to him because he got the award for the best website? Now, it's true that it's nice to have a good website, but won't people come to him because they just found the website easy to use and not because it won an award? So he might have just said, we have the best website for you, or something like that. The award or the ranking is nice for him and his company, but it doesn't do much for his customers. At least that's my opinion. In the same way, I travel a lot, as many of you do. And when I stay in a hotel, I'm always curious that every sprinkler in the hotel room has this little sign on it that says, don't hang things on the fire sprinkler. Now, granted, I've actually stayed in a hotel where somebody did, and it created a huge mess. But couldn't they avoid this just by putting a peg on the wall? Think back about Walt Disney's quote about paving the pathway. If there's such a need for people to hang things up in the hotel room, why haven't they given them something to hang things on so they won't have to look for the fire sprinkler? In almost every occasion when I see this sign, I never find something to hang things on. Who parks your cars? When I was at Busch Gardens, I worked there for 8 years growing up in Central Florida, a theme park close to Disney. One of the seasons I was in the parking lot, and they told me that the parking lot person, or the person in the parking lot, is the most important position in the park, because you're going to set the tone for our guests when they arrive, and you're going to be the last memory they have when they leave. So it's important that you set the right tone, also leave them with a lasting happy memory, a smile when they leave. Who parks our cars? Sometimes we pay the least amount of attention when we're hiring receptionists, or the people who sit close to the door, the people who answer the phone or who help with our events, things like that. Who parks our cars is very important and very serious. So my question to you is, who's parking cars for you, and who's setting the tone for you, and who's affirming that tone at the end of the meeting? At the same time, at Disney World, they play music in the parking lot. In the morning, the music is upbeat, it's fast, it's happy. In the evening, it's somber and slow to match the tone and the mood of the guest. In the same way, the person that we put on our face, the people we put out in front, should be very good at matching the tone and the needs of our donors. Why does Disney have fireworks? They didn't always have fireworks. Is it because they're spectacular, because they're festive, because they're fun, because they're bright? Well, they're all those things, but that's not why Disney has fireworks. The reason why Disney has fireworks is more economical than anything else. You see, the executives noticed that during the heat of the day, people were leaving Disneyland and not coming back. And they thought, what can we do to get people to stay? Because if they're leaving, they're not buying sweatshirts or hot dogs or popcorn or flashlights or any other souvenirs that they'd be buying if they stayed. So what can we do to get them to stay? Let's have fireworks at the end of the day. And it worked, and people stayed. The thing to remember about fireworks is that Disney gives fireworks for one reason, but people see them for a completely different reason. People love to stay for the fireworks because they're beautiful and they're fantastic to watch. But Disney wants them to see the fireworks because they know if they're staying to see the fireworks, they're much more likely to spend money during the day. So whatever we do, whenever we do it in our business, we're always going to do it for one reason, and our donors are going to see it for a different reason. Now, the two reasons may not be that separate, they may not be that far apart, but they're always going to be 2 points of view. And it's okay. I call this cross purposes because it is cross purposes. We're giving fireworks to get people to stay, and people are staying because they like to see the spectacular. Well, that's okay that we do things for one reason and donors see them for another, but we have to remember that donors will always see everything we do from their point of view and not ours. In the same way, Disney has magic bands, which control your life when you're in the park. It gets you on the rides, it opens your hotel door, it opens your cruise ship door if you go on a cruise with Disney. You can use it as a credit card. It's fun, it's convenient, and you can dress it up and buy different colors and put pins on it. And all of those reasons are why Disney made it, except the big reason they made it is so they can track your movement. And they can market to you better in the future because they'll know everything you did and how you did it and when you did it. Again, remember that cross purposes are just fine. Walt Disney was selling this souvenir booklet for 25 cents when Disneyland opened. Somebody came up to him and said, Walt, it cost us 24 cents to make this booklet. We're losing money every time we sell one. We either need to raise the price or stop selling them. Walt said, I know what we're doing with these books, and the design is not to make money. The plan is for these books to appear on the coffee tables at every house around the country so neighbors can ask, what's that place, and look at it and want to come here. So everything we do doesn't have to be for the obvious reasons. There's an implied reason too, and Disney knew that having that souvenir book on tables would get more people to come, even if they broke even or maybe lost money on the sale of each one. They'd make it back on the next visit. Across the street from Disney World in Orlando is SeaWorld, and they used to have a whale show there, and the question is, how do you train a killer whale? How do you train an animal who can kill you if it doesn't like what you're asking it to do? And the answer is, and this may surprise you, you cannot train a killer whale. There's nothing you can do to train a killer whale. You can't throw food in the water, you can't yell at it, you can't do anything to get the whale to do anything it doesn't already want to do. The way SeaWorld trained killer whales, and they still have to train them, by the way, because they also have things you never see, like they train them to present themselves for shots and medicine and for physicals and things like that. Those are trained behaviors as well. The way they train whales is to sit by the pool 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for months at a time. And when the whale does something naturally that the trainer likes, they reward that behavior. The whale then realizes it did something that earned a reward, so it will do that behavior again. You can't train a killer whale. You have to let the killer whale train the trainer. And for us, it works the same way. We have to watch donors and see what they like and reward that behavior, and they will do it again and again. We always do what we're rewarded for doing, not for what we're told to do. It's just human behavior. SeaWorld says we keep it positive. We use effective communication, encouragement, rewards, creativity, creativity, effort, and variety. We don't take a whale's compliance, motivation, or energy for granted. They look at what the whale likes to do that works for SeaWorld, and they encourage the whale to do it again. So finally, as we wrap up, we're going to learn how we can connect well with donors. Walt Disney had a saying that everything speaks. Everything we do speaks and has an influence on the people around us. So be careful about everything you say and do. And when he says everything speaks, it also applies to the things in the Disney park. This is a stagecoach that was part of one of the original attractions at Disneyland. John Hinch, the designer of the stagecoach, had used an authentic antique stagecoach and cleaned it up and polished it for the attraction. And Walt was talking with him about it one day, and he said, I noticed you've got some rubber shock absorbers or straps on the bottom between the carriage and the wheels. Did they have rubber shock absorbers in the 1870s? And John said, no, of course not. They had leather shock absorbers, but leather wears out. They're hard to replace and expensive to replace. And we can get rubber anywhere, and it's a better, smoother ride for the guests. And he said, besides, Walt, they'll never see these. Walt Disney said, John, I need you to replace those rubber straps with leather straps. And it's true, they will never see under the carriage. And even if they did, they have no idea what was on a carriage in the 1870s. But somehow they will know and appreciate that we have given them an authentic experience. So go out and buy leather straps. Walt Disney knew that everything speaks, even things that might be a whisper, still speak to our guests and to our donors about what's important. The Country Bear Jamboree is supposed to be a story about how bears came out of the woods, went into a theater, and decided to give us a show. Of course, if they're going into a theater, they're going to leave behind claw marks on the floor. So if you look on the floor of the Country Bear Jamboree, you're going to see claw marks because everything speaks. I once wrote an article for Advancing Philanthropy, a magazine from the AHP, and I had somebody call me from a charity. I'll conceal her name and you try and figure out what the name is. But she called me and said, Wayne, I'd like to talk to you because I'm going to train my staff on some Disney techniques. I'd love to talk to you more about that. And I said, that's fantastic. Why don't we talk on Friday? And I'd love to help you out. Anything I can do for you, I'd be happy to do that. So I set aside some time on that Friday, and I moved my appointments around, had time for her, and she never called me. And I wrote to her and I said, as you can see, this is exactly what I wrote. I missed hearing from you on Friday. I was eager to talk with you for two reasons. Aside from the fact I'm flattered you contacted me and appreciate you reaching out, I like your organization and its mission. At the same time, I sometimes use your organization as an example of how not to treat donors, at least in my opinion, based on my experience as a donor. You lost me as a donor a couple of years ago after the way I was treated. I'd love to share that experience with you and see what you think. And I'd love to change my teaching example too. Well, she set another appointment with me, which she missed again. And I finally wrote to her and I said, I'm assuming that it's not important anymore. You don't need me. And I mentioned to her that I really wanted to talk to her and help her so I could stop using her organization as an example. And by the way, it does not appear in today's presentation, the example. And she wrote back to me and said, well, if you got a problem with something we've done, just call the 800 number and talk to donor relations. I still use them as an example. And my point in sharing this story with you is sometimes we put our line in the water hoping for one thing and something else comes back. She ostensibly wanted help with her presentation, although she never actually connected with me, and she completely blew off the opportunity by twice asking me to change my schedule and never honoring that. But more importantly, she got a response back that there's a guy who's written books and speaks nationally and uses her organization as an example. And because she wasn't expecting that as a reply, she never bothered to follow up. So look for things or be ready for things from wherever they come from. And I'll give you some more examples of how this works on the positive end. 2 weeks after the COVID outbreak, I got this email from another charity that I support, and I've crossed out the names to protect the guilty. But I want you to notice something about this. 2 weeks into COVID, they said, we need your support now more than ever. Disney would never come to you and say, hey, come to our parks because our attendance is down by 2,000 people this week, and we really want to set that record. Or our shareholders are upset, so please help us out. No, they said, we need your support now more than ever. And that was only 2 weeks into COVID. And my immediate thought was this particular charity's been around for a century. So World War II, the Great Depression, the various recessions over time, the oil embargo, all of those things never hurt them. But COVID after 2 weeks, now more than ever. And then the whole rest of the reasons for donating are all about how we can support them and pay their bills. My hope is that we do things a little bit differently and do it more like Disney. See, they lost a great opportunity, and you can put a very positive spin on the current situation. We can create good news for donors rather than heaping on more bad news. You see, we can use that. We work for organizations that help people. We should not be about wanting money or needing money or help us pay the bills. We love seeing you, donor. We love you, and because of you, we're strong, and because of you, we're doing great things, and because of you, look what we've done, and look what we're going to do. And I know you're feeling badly, but man, take a moment and think about how great we are because of things you've done for us in the past. And just tell donors about how much you appreciate them and how anything you have is because of their generosity and how your partnership has made a difference in their lives and in the lives of others. Don't take the negative route, and certainly don't talk about needing somebody's money. Instead, tell them about the wonderful things you're doing, and people will flock to you naturally. I'm often asked, how should we thank our donors? Where should we thank them? Well, all donors lie somewhere on this continuum. Some people want nothing but recognition and praise. The spotlight cannot be bright enough. Others, humble. I don't want my name I don't even want the word anonymous to appear anywhere. I don't want anyone to know what I've done for you. So let me be humble and just disappear into anonymity. All of our donors appear somewhere on the scale, usually in between. Wherever they are on that scale, honor them one notch higher. If they want their name in 12-point font, give it to them in 13 or 14-point font. If they want their name on the front of the building, put it on the top of the door in the very front center of the building. Whatever it is they want, go one notch higher, not 2 or 3 notches, and certainly not 1 or 2 notches below, but one notch higher. Meet them where they are and go a little bit further. That's the proper way to appreciate and to thank a donor. Think about this on the opposite end of the scale. I was the executor of an estate that gave $1 million to a university. I sent a second check for $500,000 to the university, and I asked the gift officer to give me an update on the scholarship that was funded by this $1 million, which actually supplemented a lot of other lifetime gifts. What you're reading is word for word the entire letter I got back after giving the university $500,000 for the second time. Enclosed is a receipt from the university for the final distribution of $5,000. Please don't hesitate to contact me. Do you see any words that are missing from this letter? There's 2 words I can think of that miraculously don't appear anywhere in this letter. That tells me a lot about the attitude of this organization. Forget the fact that they never gave me an update. I'm still waiting for the update. And forget the fact that it took a month for this letter to come back to me. They don't have an attitude of appreciation to their donors. The good news for you is if you do show appreciation to your donors, you're well ahead of the game. And remember this, the gift is only a halfway point. We tend to think that once the gift is in, we're done. We've made it, we're final, we're good. Let's move on to the next donor. We're not done until the donor says we're done. We need to resist the temptation to celebrate the gift. We need to celebrate the donor and recognize the donor and the recognition of the donor, not celebrate the gift. This is a rock climber, his attorney, Christopher Coolish, and he climbed Mount Everest 2 or 3 years ago, and he made it to the top. He died on the way down. A lot of climbers make it to the summit of Mount Everest, but die on the way down. And the reason why is because they came all the way to Nepal to climb Mount Everest, and they're going to climb it. And what they don't realize is that when they get above a certain point, they're going to need oxygen and food and heat and other supplies, and they use them all up to get to the summit, and they have nothing to get back down, and they die on the way down. It's the same for us. We use up all of our energy, our momentum on getting the gift, And getting the gift is, yes, it's the summit of the mountain, but we have to get down from the summit to go to the summit the next time. So we have to save a lot of our energy and time to thank our donors and steward them, because the summit, it's only the halfway point. We've still got to get back down. My son asked me for a law on giving. How do you summarize your whole career, Dad, in fundraising? Here it is. A donor will only give when the emotional satisfaction of giving is greater than the comfort of keeping. This is true for all donors at all levels at all times. However, there's one thing wrong with this equation. It's not that a donor will only give, it's a donor will always give. When we make the emotional satisfaction of giving something greater than the comfort of keeping it, we cannot stop a donor from giving us money. If it's more emotionally satisfying to give than to keep, we cannot keep their money away. So the key is to always increase the emotional satisfaction for the donor. And if you have to, show them how keeping their money is not as advantageous. Look for ways to honor donors that show when you care. And yes, there are catalogs and things we can buy off the store or off the racks that thank donors, but look for ways to thank them the way Walt Disney might have thanked them. I have a donor that loves dogwood trees. When I worked for a university, I said, hey, are you planting any dogwood trees anytime soon? They said, we plant them every 2 weeks. So I found this tree that was going to be planted in about a week and a half. I called the donor and I brought out a gold shovel from the closet and I helped him turn the mulch over on this tree. And I said, his name is Garland. Garland, this is your tree. And then this 85-year-old, I would take him on rides around town when I visit with him, and I'd always take him by the tree and show him how his tree was doing. I once was meeting with a donor who was giving this little wooden elephant to us. It had been on their coffee table, for her coffee table, for more than 40 years. She and her husband got it in India half a century before. And she was downsizing and decided to give it to us. And at the same time, I got an email from the Journal of Gift Planning that said, have you ever received an unusual gift? Well, I wrote to them and I showed them a picture of this elephant, and they put it on the cover of the magazine. Cost me nothing. Do you think she liked seeing this elephant that she loved so dearly that reminded her of her husband? And now she saw it on the cover of a national magazine? She loved it. Cost me nothing, but it was priceless for the donor. When I worked for the Trust Company of Virginia, I would have people, my friends, ask me in the fundraising world, hey, introduce me to your wealthy clients at the trust company. My answer was always the same. I can't introduce you to any of my clients. However, if your charity was one of our charitable clients, and that was my job, was to manage our charitable clients and serve them, I would feature a different charity in the newsletter every quarter, and I would introduce them to all of our wealthy clients. So if you have a vendor that's working with you that has an opportunity to spread your message, by all means, ask them to, because we would feature charity every quarter. Saw this ad in the newspaper. For those of you that don't know what a newspaper is, it's kind of like an iPad, but on paper. I remember when they used to deliver it to my door every day. And this ad was in here. It said, do you have an unusual or great job? I responded and I said, yeah, I've got the best job in the world. I'm a fundraiser. I was featured in the newspaper talking about how much I love fundraising. Do you think my donors like seeing that? Do you think my supervisor likes seeing that? You bet. Oh, by the way, cost, zero. I had a donor that funded a concert series for us. I gave them the used baton signed by the conductor. Nothing, priceless to the donor. I once had a donor tell me 20 years later how much it meant to him to be on a car ride to the airport to pick up Walter Cronkite, who was speaking at an event at the charity. If we're going to pick up a VIP and there's an empty seat in the car, we've lost an opportunity to spoil a donor. If you're going to go pick up a comedian or a singer or an actor who's coming to your event or for whatever occasion, and there's an empty seat in the car, you've lost an opportunity to spoil one of your donors. When I worked for the trust company, I did not have a parking space, but you did. Make sure if we have any reserved parking spaces at our organizations, that we at least have one space for our donors. Look for any opportunity that comes your way. Disney was all about looking for opportunities and taking advantage of them. When I was in Alabama, that was my friend and my pastor, Mike Calvert. And one Sunday he was preaching about his trip to Houston, Texas, where he saw all kinds of billboards for Mike Calvert Toyota. And it got him thinking, what would happen if I had gone into the car business instead of the preaching business? And I woke up, I was sitting in church that day and I said, you know what? I'm going to do something for Mike. So I wrote a letter to Mike Calvert Toyota and I told him the story. And I said, could you just send me one of your car badges? And I'm going to sneak over to my pastor's house and put it on the back of his Toyota truck. Well, it took about a week and they sent me a package of things. And they sent me a lifetime supply of Mike Calvert keychains and Mike Calvert flashlights and Mike Calvert's lens wipes. And by the way, if you need some, let me know. I've still got some. But they also sent me a Mike Calvert license plate. My wife and I snuck over to his house and told his wife that we were coming, and she kept the secret, and we changed his license plate frame with this one, which is still on there today, by the way. And it took him 3 or 4 days to figure it out. He couldn't figure out who had done this to his car. And finally, on Wednesday morning, we did it on a Sunday night. On Wednesday morning, he told his wife, I know who did it. It was Wayne, because that's the kind of thing that Wayne does. There's 500 families in our church at the time, and he knew it was me because that's the kind of thing I do. When you serve a donor, when you thank a donor for a donation, do the kind of thing that only you can do and get known for that. This family was traveling from, I think, Baltimore to Los Angeles to adopt a child. The flight attendants asked them, why are you guys so excited? And they told them about going to adopt the child. And when they landed in Dallas to make a connection, the Dallas crew had a welcome for them. And they told them about how wonderful it was what they were doing. And then when they got to Los Angeles, there was another welcome crew. And on the flight home, the flight attendants passed around Southwest napkins and asked each of the passengers on the airplane to write a note of well wishes to the couple. It cost Southwest Airlines nothing, but it got them a national news story. And do you think that couple will ever throw those napkins away? What can we do with what's already right in front of us? When I was an adult leader at Camp Buck Tom's with my Boy Scout troop, they gave us these postcards. You're looking at the front of the postcard, and they said, give one postcard to every scout in your troop and ask them to write a message to the donors for the park or the camp. Dear donors, I really like the horsemanship area. It looked beautiful and roomy for the horses. I had a great time swimming a mile. I also like doing the first aid mirage. Thanks for donating. Instead of us writing a thank you letter, is there anyone else that could write a thank you letter for us that would have a lot more impact and meaning? At the same time, the camp wrote a letter to my wife thanking her for sending me to the camp. You can't ask for better donor recognition. As we wrap up, remember, it's never not personal. Disney always knew everything was personal. If anyone ever says, don't take this personally, you know they're lying to you. You're about to get some very personal information that's probably going to be painful. Everything is always personal. People expect the conversation, or donors expect the conversation to be about them and not about us. So always make it about them. If you want to be brave, ask a donor why she gives. Mrs. Jones, you've been giving to us every year for 10 years. Why do you give to us? If you want to be really brave, ask a donor why they stopped giving. Mrs. Jones, you've given to us for the last 10 years, but not for the last 2. What happened? People want us to keep our promises, no matter how big or how small they are. If I say I'm going to meet you tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you can count on me being there at 10 o'clock. People want us to be passionate as they are. They also want us to listen. I've got a lot of people tweeting and Facebooking and talking, and really, they just want to be heard. They don't want to listen to us. They want us to listen to them. And they want us to listen carefully. When you're with a donor, when I'm with a donor, I leave my cell phone in the car. Turn it off. Leave it in the car. When the phone rings and you're with a donor, or you check a text message when you're with a donor, the message we send to the donor, whether we like it or not, is I'm not sure who's on the other end, but they're probably more important than you. So when I'm with you, whether you're a donor or a colleague, my phone is off or in my pocket. Facebook, Twitter are highly overrated. Real conversation, underused. At Disney, you're not allowed to point. You have to show or walk with somebody. If they ask you for directions to the restroom, you don't point to the restroom, you walk them to the restroom. We should do the same thing. Ask a staff member's family member to make a cold call to your organization and see how it's handled. You'll learn a lot that way, good or bad. Use the phone, not email. Better yet, meet donors in person when you can. Remember too that the ask is not an event, it's a process. And the best way we can ever connect with a donor is to ask questions that begin with who, what, when, where, and why. When I'm with a donor, I try to make every sentence out of my mouth begin with one of these words. And here's the thing, even if you have a conversation for 2 hours and you accomplish this by only beginning sentences with these words, the donor will never notice. They'll only know that you were a great conversationalist. Please remember to thank your donors, and thank your donors. And remember too, just like at SeaWorld, we do not do what we are told to do. We do what we're rewarded for doing. Donors will do things for us again and again when we reward them appropriately for doing it. And always be on time. At Disney, everything is timed and everything starts on time. When we're late, we're telling people that our time is more valuable than theirs. So always be on time. Turn your cell phone off. Look at your business card. A lot of our donors are older. Can an older person read your business card with older eyes? Is there still a fax number on it? Look at your business card and make it easier for donors to use it. Make sure you receive all of the mail from your organization. Every appeal should come to your mailbox or your email inbox, and make sure you receive mail from other charities too. If somebody comes to you and says something terrible has happened to them, don't talk about policies and procedures and how they're being treated fairly. The answer to a donor when they've been disgruntled is to simply say, that's horrible, and listen to their story, and then see what you can do to fix it. I want to close by pointing out to you somebody from a picture I showed you earlier, and that's Bub Thomas in this picture. Bub was a singer for the Dapper Dans at Walt Disney World, and he started in California at Disneyland and started the Dapper Dans in Orlando when that park opened. He was a vaudeville performer, and during vaudeville, he was both an artist and a performer. And a doctor somewhere heard that Bub was an artist and asked him to draw a picture of one of his patients, and I'll call her Nancy. And Nancy was a young child who wanted to go horseback riding but would never live to be able to do it. So he said, Bub, would you please draw a picture of Nancy on a horseback? Here's a picture of Nancy. Bub did that, and he sent the picture to the doctor, and before long, doctors all over the country were sending similar requests to Bub. Bub was never paid to do this. As a Dapper Dan, you sing for about 20 minutes an hour and then have 40 minutes off and repeat that 6 to 7 times a day. When the other Dapper Dans would hang out with guests or hang out in the break room or maybe practice, Bub would run up to his office and draw these pictures for kids he would never meet or never see. Well, I was interviewing Bub and for a book I was writing in the 90s on Disney. And I watched as Bub's jacket was retired. He was such a legend at Disney that they retired his suit, and no Dapper Dan will ever wear those colors again in Indy Disney Park, that golden color. And about 3 months after he retired, when he retired from singing, Disney then finally did pay him to do the drawings. He would come up to his office and work on those drawings for Disney and send them to doctors and kids all over the world. And about 3 months after his jacket was retired, unfortunately, Bub was in a car accident on the way to work. He was killed. And Disney asked me to write his obituary. And I wrote it for the official company newspaper and for the company archives. And how do you write about somebody who worked with Mel Torme and Bob Hope and all these famous people, and he went into Vietnam and entertained the troops in the jungles? What do you say about somebody like that? And I realized that I never would find the right words to memorialize Bub. Instead, I thought about Bub, and when I talked with him and interviewed him for the book, and I remembered something about Bub that became the keystone of the obituary. And here it is. When he was not singing with the Dapper Dans, he would bound up the steps to a second-story office 2 at a time. He responded to every letter the same day he received them. On a recent day, he mailed 14 letters to children. When he stopped singing last fall, he devoted all of his time to helping children. This 85-year-old man, and he was in his mid-80s, however old he was going up the steps 2 at a time to do a job that he would never be paid for, to help kids he would never see. My hope for you and for me is that when we do our jobs in such an important role that we have, is that when people see us, they know that we take the steps two at a time. When you do that, everything else falls into place. Take the steps two at a time. Here's Bob. Thanks for our time together. I hope this has been helpful and useful for you. You may not remember my name or where I work, although I hope you do, because I work for a great organization. But if you remember that you didn't fall asleep today, if you ever have a question for me, you can find me. Just remember that you didn't fall asleep, because you can reach me at leastididn'tfallasleep.com. And yes, that is true. You can find me there. Thank you so much for our time together. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Go out and take the steps two at a time. Thank you so much.
That was an incredible presentation, Wayne. Thank you. I find that the thing I probably took away as the most meaningful piece of information is just how Disney and the way that they think about the work that they do seemed too big, too extreme in the beginning to the teams that were working there. But that it was critical for Disney to put himself in the shoes of his guests and to ensure a seamless experience. The best fundraisers do the same thing, put themselves in the shoes of their donors and really understand how to be donor-centric. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a bunch. We're going to take a longer break now, more like 30 minutes, for you to get a chance to grab a meal or check in on email, and we look forward to seeing you in about 30 minutes.